This is When the Darkness Walks In, written by Gerson Masso. Chapter 5, Satan's Internal Affairs. It looked like a movement of light, exposing darkness, calling out witches, sorcerers, and tearing down evil. But beneath the surface, hell was reorganizing, not retreating. What we witnessed wasn't deliverance. It was a demonic reset. The late 1980s brought with it a heightened sense of urgency in Bubembe, as the specter of witchcraft loomed larger than ever. The community, already steeped in fears of the supernatural, found itself grappling with a surge in mysterious and troubling occurrences. This environment of heightened anxiety was fertile ground for the rise of a new movement, known as the Camuchape, which both reflected and responded to the deep-seated fears that permeated daily life in the community. The Camuchape emerged almost as if from the shadows themselves. They were a group of individuals who claimed to possess extraordinary abilities to detect and unveil witchcraft. Their arrival was marked by an air of mystery and authority. They were not merely another group of local healers or spiritual leaders, but were perceived as a force with the power to confront the very essence of the dark practices that had gripped our community. Their methods were both dramatic and controversial. The Camuchape performed their rituals in broad daylight, often at the homes of those first suspected of witchcraft, or in other public settings. These elaborate ceremonies involved chanting, drumming, and dancing, intended to invoke spirits and supernaturally expose hidden witchcraft. Practitioners claimed they could extract occult objects directly from the ground, walls, or floors using their bare hands, often in dramatic and immediate displays. This public display was both mesmerizing and unnerving, drawing large crowds of villagers who were desperate for relief from the pervasive fear of witchcraft. One of the most striking aspects of the Camuchape's rituals was their use of symbolic actions. They would often remove their shoes, belts, and watches as part of the ceremony. These actions, while seemingly mundane, were imbued with ritual significance. The removal of personal items was interpreted as a way to shed worldly concerns and connect more deeply with the spiritual realm. The Camuchape's actions were accompanied by rhythmic chants and songs, which were believed to summon the spirits necessary for their work. Despite their dramatic and public displays, the Camuchape's methods were controversial among those who held Christian beliefs. To many in the Christian community, their practices seemed to align more closely with the very dark forces they claimed to combat. The rituals performed by the Camuchape included invoking spirits and engaging in practices that were seen as contrary to the teachings of the Bible. For those of us who trusted in the protection of Jesus Christ, the Camuchape represented a troubling manifestation of spiritual darkness. The community's reaction to the Camuchape was complex. On one hand, they were welcomed with a mix of hope and desperation. The pervasive fear of witchcraft had reached such a pitch that many people were willing to embrace any means they believed could provide relief. The Camuchape seemed to offer a solution, or at least a semblance of one. They conducted public ceremonies where they claimed to identify and expose witches, often uncovering what were described as hidden witchcrafts. The spectacle of their work, with its dramatic rituals and purported revelations, offered a temporary sense of control over the chaos that had gripped the community. On the other hand, there were those who remained skeptical of the Camuchape's true motives. Their rituals were performed openly, but their origins and affiliations were shrouded in secrecy. They never disclosed where they came from or who had sent them, and this lack of transparency fueled suspicions. To those of us who viewed the world through the lens of Christian faith, it was clear that the Camuchape's methods were problematic. Their rituals involved elements that were starkly at odds with Christian teachings, such as invoking spirits and performing ceremonial acts that seemed to appeal to dark forces. The Camuchape's impact was profound, as their presence intensified the already existing fears and anxieties within the community. The ceremonies they conducted were not only dramatic, but also deeply unsettling. They would often hold sessions where individuals accused of witchcraft were publicly revealed, subjected to shaming, and marked with ritualistic remedies and tattoos intended to cleanse them of their supposed dark powers. The process was as much about spectacle as it was about supposed spiritual cleansing. Accused witches were often forced to undergo painful and humiliating remedies, which were said to render them spiritually impotent. The methods employed by the Camuchape were not only controversial, but also divisive. They created a schism within the community, with some people embracing their methods as a necessary evil and others condemning them as a dangerous deviation from true spiritual practice. This divide was exacerbated by the fact that the Camuchape's activities were not regulated or sanctioned by any established authority. Government officials were aware of their activities, but there was no formal action taken against them. This lack of oversight allowed the Camuchape to operate with relative impunity, further fueling the fears and uncertainties of the community. Amidst this turmoil, the Christian community found itself in a challenging position. For many of us, the rise of the Camuchape was a stark reminder of the ongoing spiritual battle we faced. We believed that true protection and salvation came from Jesus Christ, not from the elaborate rituals and ceremonies of the Camuchape. This belief was reinforced by our faith, which taught us that the power of Jesus was far greater than any dark force we might encounter. The Camuchape's activities only highlighted the contrast between the light of Christ Jesus and the shadows of spiritual deception. One of the most remarkable events of this period was the conversion of the Camuchape leader to Christianity. His dramatic and unforeseen shift in faith provided a unique and revealing perspective on the workings of the Camuchape. During a church service, he recounted his experiences to the congregation, offering an in-depth account of the supernatural realm he had encountered while working with the group. His testimony shed new light on the operations of the Camuchape, making his transition a profoundly significant moment. According to his testimony, the Camuchape had been taken to a world of darkness, a place inhabited by beings that were organized in a manner akin to a worldly government. These beings, he explained, were not just random spirits, but were part of a structured hierarchy of dark forces. The power that the Camuchape had used to detect and expose witchcraft was granted to them by these beings, who sought to undermine the effectiveness of witches. The leader's testimony was both compelling and unsettling, offering profound insight into the motivations and influences behind the Camuchape's activities. He revealed that the supernatural beings he encountered were deeply dissatisfied with the performance of the witches. These witches, originally intended to inflict death and harm on the community, had deviated from their primary mission. They had strayed from their mission, becoming engrossed in internal competition rather than fulfilling their intended purpose. According to the leader, this discord among the dark forces led to the recruitment of new servants to neutralize the existing witches, with the ultimate goal of unleashing a new generation of even more dangerous witches. Listening to the leader's account, it became evident that the spiritual warfare we faced was far more complex than we had previously understood. The testimony reinforced the belief that the real battle was not just against individual witches, but against a structured and organized realm of darkness. It also underscored the importance of maintaining faith in Jesus as the ultimate source of protection and guidance. As we reflected on the leader's testimony and the activities of the Camuchape, it became clear that the community's fears and uncertainties were rooted in a deeper spiritual conflict. The rise of the Camuchape highlighted the pervasive nature of spiritual warfare and the need for discernment and vigilance in the face of deceptive practices. It was a period marked by both fear and hope, as we navigated the complexities of a world where the boundaries between the seen and unseen were often blurred. The Camuchape, a group that rose to notoriety by claiming the power to detect and expose witchcraft, were not operating by divine authority, but by supernatural means rooted in the same forbidden knowledge delivered by the fallen angels described in the book of Enoch, as mentioned earlier. Though they presented themselves as protectors of the community, their dramatic rituals, chanting, trances, spirit invocations, mirrored the very corrupt teaching that the Watchers introduced to mankind, 1 Enoch 7-8. These rituals were not acts of holy intervention, but spiritually charged performances that drew power from demonic sources, perpetuating fear while tightening the grip of darkness over the people. What appeared as spiritual warfare against witches was, in fact, another layer of deception, using ancient occult knowledge disguised as protection to draw people further from the true God. The experiences of encountering witch and witnessing supernatural phenomena were not isolated incidents, but part of a broader spiritual conflict that transcends time and cultural boundaries. This deception continues today in subtler yet equally insidious forms, most notably through the modern phenomenon of alien encounters. Reports of luminous, temporary flesh-like apparitions, beings that abduct humans and impart cryptic knowledge, bear eerie similarities to the ancient manifestations of the Watchers and their Nephilim offspring. These so-called extraterrestrials often resemble the restless spirits of the Nephilim, condemned to wander the earth, 1 Enoch 15:8-12, seeking hosts and sowing confusion. Humanity's growing fascination with aliens, like the fear-driven reliance on the movement like Camuchape, serves only to distract from the gospel and the saving truth of Jesus Christ. In both ancient and modern contexts, these manifestations are not neutral. They are part of a coordinated spiritual strategy to deceive, manipulate, and ultimately separate souls from God. The battle is not against flesh and blood, nor merely against witches, but against ancient powers of darkness that are still at work, both covertly and overtly. In the end, the rise of the Camuchape served as a powerful reminder of the importance of staying true to our faith and seeking guidance from the light of Christ Jesus. Their presence and activities illuminated the ongoing struggle between good and evil, highlighting the need for a steadfast commitment to spiritual truth and protection. The lessons learned during this tumultuous period became a cornerstone of my understanding of spiritual warfare, shaping my perspective on the battle between light and darkness that continues to define our world. Jesus Christ offers a shield against these spiritual deceptions. The power of His name and His teachings provide a refuge from the misleading forces that seek to undermine our faith in Jesus. Just as my experiences in Bubembe and the encounter under the mango tree illustrated the reality of spiritual warfare, they also affirmed the efficacy of divine protection. By understanding the true nature of these spiritual threats, we become better equipped to navigate the deceptive complexities of the modern world. The growing fascination with extraterrestrials must be approached with discernment, recognizing that such entities are not beings from distant galaxies, but manifestations of the same demonic forces that have plagued humanity since ancient times. With Jesus Christ on our side, we can confront these threats with courage and unwavering faith, knowing that we are protected by the ultimate source of spiritual authority, until the day He returns to reward each according to their deeds and bring final judgment upon Satan and all his servants. Thank you for listening to Chapter 5 of When the Darkness Walks In by Gerson Maso. Subscribe and turn on notifications to hear more when new content is posted.